Those phones your kids are using, where'd they come from? I need to see receipts.
Officer, we are having lunch. My grandchildren and I are customers here.
I didn't ask if you were customers. I asked where those phones came from. We've had reports of stolen devices.
I don't understand why we're being questioned. They belong to my grandchildren.
Ma'am, remain seated while I look into this.
Okay.
Think about what you just witnessed. A police officer, a federal judge, two honor roll teenagers, a crowded KFC, and a confrontation about to become a $3.5 million constitutional violation. Stay with me because Officer Anthony Smith just racially profiled the wrong family. That woman sitting calmly across from those terrified teens? That's Judge Agnes Lawrence, 62 years old, United States District Court, federal appointee with lifetime tenure. Someone who doesn't answer to the mayor, doesn't answer to the police chief, doesn't answer to anyone except the Constitution itself. And Officer Smith just violated that Constitution right in front of her. When this body camera footage surfaces, the footage Smith's partner captured because Smith conveniently forgot to activate his own. When the city realizes what happened, this is going to force a reckoning about how police treat black families in spaces white officers think they have the authority to patrol with bias. Leave a comment if you believe Smith just committed career suicide with a badge on. This is not just any grandmother. This is federal judicial power meeting small-town police prejudice. And prejudice is about to get a constitutional education. Judge Agnes Lawrence had spent 34 years in the legal system. First as a public defender representing those who couldn't afford representation, then as a civil rights attorney taking on police departments, housing authorities, and corporations that discriminated with impunity. For the past 18 years, she'd served as a United States District Court judge, presiding over some of the most significant civil rights cases in the region. 34 years. And in all that time, through all those trials and rulings and precedent-setting decisions, Agnes had never stopped being a grandmother first. Never stopped prioritizing the two teenagers who called her Gigi, and made everything she'd fought for feel personal rather than abstract. Every other Saturday that Agnes wasn't hearing cases or attending judicial conferences, she picked up her grandchildren from their mother's townhouse in the city and took them somewhere special. Sometimes the Natural History Museum, sometimes the indoor rock climbing gym, sometimes the bookstore where Marcus could lose himself in sci-fi novels while Keisha dominated the graphic novel section. Today they were celebrating. Marcus, 16 years old, had finished the semester with straight A's, maintaining a 4.0 GPA while taking 3 AP courses. Keisha, 14 years old, had been accepted into her high school's gifted and talented program, one of only 12 freshmen selected from over 200 applicants. Agnes had promised them a reward, their choice. They chose KFC in Meadowbrook. Not the one near their house in the city. The one in Meadowbrook, the affluent suburb where the restaurant was newer, the dining room cleaner, and the experience felt special rather than routine. Meadowbrook. Population 38,000. Median household income $142,000. 88% white, 2% black. The kind of suburb where people moved specifically for good schools and safe neighborhoods. Coded language everyone understood meant away from people who looked like Marcus and Keisha. Where neighborhood Facebook groups obsessed over suspicious vehicles that turned out to be black contractors. Where the police department had a reputation for aggressive quality of life enforcement at the borders where wealth met diversity. Agnes knew Meadowbrook's reputation, knew the statistics she'd seen in cases that crossed her bench, traffic stop data showing black drivers were 600% more likely to be pulled over than white drivers in Meadowbrook despite making up only 2% of the population. She'd read depositions from black families stopped for matching descriptions. She'd reviewed body camera footage of officers demanding IDs from black teenagers walking through neighborhoods where white teenagers skateboard freely. And she had been furious. Furious at the systemic rot. Furious at the qualified immunity that shielded bad officers. Furious at city attorneys who settled cases quietly rather than firing officers who violated civil rights repeatedly. But here's what Meadowbrook Police Department didn't understand. Agnes wasn't some city council member they could ignore or some activist they could dismiss. She was a federal judge. She had the power to issue injunctions, to order oversight, to rule that entire police practices were unconstitutional. And more importantly, she was asserting the fundamental right of her grandchildren to exist in public spaces without suspicion, to eat lunch in a nice restaurant, to be teenagers anywhere they wanted to be teenagers, including wealthy white suburbs that treated black presence as probable cause. So when Marcus and Keisha asked to go to the Meadowbrook KFC, Agnes said yes without hesitation. Packed them in her car, drove 25 minutes from the city, pulled into the parking lot at 2:45 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, walked through the door with her head high and her grandchildren laughing beside her. She bought them lunch, a famous bowl for Marcus, chicken tenders for Keisha, biscuits, mashed potatoes, coleslaw, sweet tea for both. The full celebration meal. And because they had earned it, because they had worked relentlessly and excelled, because their grandmother believed in recognizing achievement, Agnes gave them the gifts she'd been planning for months. 2 smartphones, iPhone 14s, not the newest model but new to them. Significant purchases for teenagers who'd been using hand-me-down devices with cracked screens. They sat at a booth near the window. Marcus unwrapped his phone carefully, immediately asking about the data plan and whether he could download a podcast app. Keisha squealed with 14-year-old joy, asking if she could set up social media accounts now that she had a phone that could actually handle the apps. Agnes laughed, helped them both activate the devices, set up parental controls, transfer their contacts. Watched them glow with pride and excitement. Marcus showed her his report card again, pointing to the teacher comments praising his analytical essays. Keisha showed her the gifted program acceptance letter she'd been carrying in her backpack for 3 days, reading the line about exceptional potential out loud for the 4th time. This was the moment Agnes lived for. Not the courtroom victories or the published opinions or the respect from colleagues. This, her grandchildren, happy, safe, celebrated, dreaming about their futures. And then Officer Anthony Smith walked over to their booth. Officer Anthony Smith is on patrol. 43 years old, 15 years with Meadowbrook Police Department. He's in full uniform, armed, cruiser parked outside with the engine running, grabbing a quick lunch between calls. He's been watching them since they sat down. Not because they're doing anything suspicious, because they're there. Black woman, 2 black teenagers, expensive phones on the table, in his town, in his jurisdiction, on his watch. Officer Smith has a history. 23 complaints in 15 years. 16 for excessive force, all against people of color. 7 specifically alleging racial profiling. Stops without reasonable suspicion. Demands for ID without legal justification. Searches without probable cause. All 23 investigated by Meadowbrook PD's own Internal Affairs Unit. All 23 dismissed with findings like within departmental guidelines, or insufficient evidence, or complainant declined to pursue. 1 complaint from a black college student who claimed Smith told him, "You people don't belong in Meadowbrook after dark." Dismissed because the city attorney convinced the family that pursuing it would be expensive and futile. Judge Lawrence doesn't know this history yet, but she will, because after today, she will use her federal subpoena power to obtain every complaint, every body camera video, every disciplinary record, every internal affairs interview that Meadowbrook PD has on Officer Anthony Smith. And she will discover a pattern so egregious, so well documented, so deliberately ignored that it will form the evidentiary foundation for not just a lawsuit, but a Department of Justice pattern and practice investigation. There's more. In 2019, the Meadowbrook City Attorney sent an internal email to the police chief and the mayor. Subject line: The Anthony Smith Problem. The email, which will become Exhibit A in the federal lawsuit, reads, Smith is a lawsuit waiting to happen. We've paid out $140,000 in settlements on 3 cases in the past 4 years, all involving minority complainants, all involving allegations that Smith used excessive force or racially profiled. We keep settling to avoid discovery, but eventually someone is going to take us to trial. Recommend reassignment to desk duty or early retirement package. The police chief's response, also in writing, also destined to become evidence. Smith gets results. Crime stats in his sector are down. Community complaints are up, but that's the nature of proactive policing. We stand by our officers. That email will cost Meadowbrook $3.5 million. Smith finishes his chicken, wipes his hands on a napkin, stands up. His eyes lock onto the smartphones. New devices still in the process of being set up, 2 black kids, expensive electronics. In his mind, the calculation is automatic, reflexive, racist, theft, drug money, gang activity, something wrong. He walks over, doesn't introduce himself politely, doesn't ask permission to interrupt their meal, just stops at the edge of their booth, hand resting on his duty belt near his service weapon, and speaks with the authoritative tone of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. Those phones. Where did you get them? Agnes looks up. She is 62 years old. She has been a black woman in America for 62 years. She has also been a federal judge for 18 years, someone who recognizes a Fourth Amendment violation the moment it begins. But she stays calm because her grandchildren are watching, because she will not teach them to panic around police, because she has done nothing wrong and neither have they. Excuse me? Those iPhones your kids have. Where'd they come from? I need to see receipts. Marcus's smile disappears. Keisha's hand stops mid-swipe on her new screen. They both look at their grandmother, confused, frightened. Why is the police officer angry at them? Officer, we're having lunch. My grandchildren and I are customers here. Is there a problem? Smith's jaw tightens. He doesn't like her tone. Doesn't like that she didn't immediately comply. Doesn't like that she's questioning his authority instead of submitting to it. I didn't ask if you were customers. I asked where those phones came from. Kids from the city don't have brand new iPhones unless someone else paid for them. Kids from the city. Everyone in the restaurant knows what that means. The white couple 2 booths over stops eating, openly staring. A young mother with 2 children moves her family away from the confrontation. The teenager working the register pulls out her phone, starts recording. The assistant manager freezes near the drink station, uncertain whether to intervene. Kids from the city. Not kids in general. Not teenagers. Kids from the city. Black kids. Kids who, in Officer Smith's worldview, should not have nice things unless those things were purchased with drug money or welfare fraud or theft. Agnes takes a breath. She could end this immediately, could produce her federal judicial ID, could state her title and position, could watch this officer's face drain of color. But she wants to see how far this will go. Wants to document how this officer treats people when he thinks there are no consequences. Wants evidence, not assumptions. Wants this on record. Kids from the city? What exactly do you mean by that, officer? Smith leans forward, his voice dropping but hardening. You know exactly what I mean. Those phones are worth $800 each. You expect me to believe you just bought them? Yes, I do expect you to believe that because I did buy them, and I don't appreciate the implication you're making. You're getting loud. You're being disruptive. Smith's hand moves closer to his weapon. Not quite a threat, but a presence. A reminder of who has the power in this interaction. And frankly, Meadowbrook has standards. There are KFCs in the city in your neighborhood. You don't need to come out here. Keisha starts crying. Silent tears running down her 14-year-old face because a police officer with a gun is accusing them of being thieves. And she doesn't understand why getting good grades and celebrating with her grandmother has turned into this. Marcus has gone rigid, his hands visible on the table, his teenage brain running through every news story he's ever seen about police encounters gone wrong. Agnes puts her arm around Marcus, reaches across the table to hold Keisha's hand, keeps her voice level and controlled because they are watching. Because what she does next will teach them how to assert their rights while surviving encounters like this. Officer, we have every right to be here. We are paying customers. My grandchildren are eating lunch and setting up phones I purchased to reward their academic achievements. We have done nothing wrong, nothing illegal, nothing that provides you with reasonable suspicion to detain us. I need your name and badge number because what you're doing right now is harassment, and it may be a violation of our civil rights. Smith's face flushes red. His voice rises, loud enough that every person in the restaurant can hear clearly. You don't tell me what to do. People like you don't give me orders. You want to be in Meadowbrook? Fine. But I'm going to verify those phones aren't stolen property. And if you don't cooperate, I can call Child Protective Services. Have them determine whether these kids should even be with you. The threat lands like a physical blow. Agnes sees Keisha's eyes widen in terror, sees Marcus's hands start to shake, sees the fear that black families know intimately, the fear that the state can separate you from your children based on an officer's word, that compliance isn't enough, that being right isn't enough, that at any moment your family can be destroyed by someone with a badge and a bias and no accountability. And that's when Agnes decides, enough. Officer Smith. Agnes's voice is quiet, controlled, but it carries through the restaurant like a gavel strike. Your badge number is 472. I can see it clearly. I know your name because before I respond to what you just said, I want you to understand exactly who you're talking to. I am Judge Agnes Lawrence, United States District Court, Middle District, federal appointee with life tenure. I have presided over civil rights cases for 18 years. I have ruled on Fourth Amendment violations. I have issued injunctions against police departments. And what you are doing right now, detaining my grandchildren and me without reasonable suspicion, making assumptions based solely on our race, threatening to weaponize Child Protective Services as retaliation for my assertion of constitutional rights, is a textbook violation of the Fourth and 14th Amendments. The restaurant has gone completely silent. Every phone is out. Every eye is on Officer Smith. His face has gone from red to ashen gray. His hand drops away from his belt. I didn't know. You didn't need to know who I am. You needed to treat us like you would treat any other family. But since you clearly cannot meet that basic standard of professional conduct, let me be explicitly clear. You are going to step away from this table. You are going to return to your vehicle. You are going to document this encounter in an official report, which I will subpoena. And then you are going to wait while I decide whether to pursue this as a formal federal civil rights complaint, a lawsuit, or both. Smith backs away, stammering something about just doing his job, about procedures, about not meaning any disrespect. He leaves the restaurant, gets in his cruiser, drives away. Agnes sits back down, pulls both teenagers into a hug, and makes her first call. Not to the police department, but to her former law clerk who now works at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. By the time Agnes gets Marcus and Keisha home to their mother 2 hours later, she has made 7 calls. To her law clerk, to her former colleague who specializes in Section 1983 civil rights litigation, to a child psychologist who works with teenagers experiencing police trauma, to the Meadowbrook City Attorney, informing them formally that a federal lawsuit is forthcoming, to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, to the chief judge of her district, recusing herself from any case that might involve Meadowbrook PD, to a reporter at the regional newspaper who's been investigating police misconduct for 3 years. She has not called Meadowbrook Police Department, will not give them advance warning, will not allow them to shape the narrative or destroy evidence before federal subpoenas arrive. That evening, after Marcus and Keisha are home with their mother, after Agnes has watched her daughter cycle through shock and rage and determination, after they've decided together to pursue this with every legal tool available, Agnes sits at her home office desk and begins building the case that will dismantle Officer Smith's career and reform an entire police department. She has the receipts. Apple Store purchase, 2 iPhone 14s, $799 each plus tax, purchased 6 days earlier, her credit card statement showing the transaction. The receipt for lunch at KFC, $43.67, timestamp showing 2:51 p.m. Everything documented, everything provable. She has the video. The teenage employee who recorded the entire confrontation has already sent the file. 9 minutes of footage showing Smith's aggression, Agnes's restraint, the teenager's visible fear, crystal clear audio capturing every word including kids from the city, and people like you, and the CPS threat. She has the witness statements. The white couple who moved their children away has already emailed, offering to testify that Smith was threatening and that Agnes did nothing to escalate. The assistant manager has promised that corporate will preserve all security footage and cooperate fully. 6 other customers have reached out through the courthouse, offering corroboration. And she has something Officer Smith doesn't know about yet. She has federal subpoena power. By Monday morning, she will have every document in Smith's personnel file. By Tuesday, she will have every internal affairs complaint ever filed against him. By Wednesday, she will have the 2019 email from the city attorney warning that Smith is a lawsuit waiting to happen. That email, buried in city records, ignored by police leadership, will become the evidence that transforms this from a single incident into proof of systemic deliberate indifference to constitutional violations. Officer Anthony Smith thought he was confronting a grandmother and 2 teenagers who couldn't fight back. He was wrong. Marcus had carried that report card in his backpack for 3 days, pulling it out to show Agnes every time she called. 6 AP classes, for .0 GPA, Teacher comments that made her tear up. Exceptional analytical mind. College-ready work ethic. A pleasure to teach. Keisha's gifted program letter came 2 days later, delivered by a counselor who told Agnes personally that her granddaughter scored in the 98th percentile. Out of 200 freshman applicants, only 12 made it. Keisha was one of them. Agnes had promised them anything they wanted. Marcus said KFC. Not the location near their house with the flickering lights and the occasional broken soda machine. The Meadowbrook one. The one with the clean booths and the updated menu and the extra crispy chicken that somehow tasted better than anywhere else. Keisha agreed immediately, already imagining the biscuits and mashed potatoes. Agnes knew what Meadowbrook represented, knew the demographics, knew the reputation, knew the risks. But she also knew this. Her grandchildren had earned this celebration, and they deserved to eat lunch wherever they damn well pleased. She loaded them into her car at 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, drove across town with the windows down and the music up, listening to them laugh and plan their futures. 25 minutes later, she pulled into the Meadowbrook KFC parking lot, walked through the door with her head high and her grandchildren glowing beside her, ready to celebrate excellence. Meadowbrook existed on a simple equation. Property values plus homogeneity equals safety. Population 38,000. Median income $142,000. 88% white, 2% black. The kind of suburb where good schools meant segregated schools, where low crime meant aggressive enforcement at the borders, where family-friendly was code everyone understood. The Meadowbrook Police Department had a documented approach. Traffic stops at the city limits increased 340% after dark, almost exclusively targeting vehicles with drivers who didn't match the suburb's complexion. Stop and frisk encounters clustered along the commercial corridor where the bus line from the city terminated. Loitering ordinances enforced selectively. White teenagers could skateboard through neighborhoods for hours, but black teenagers walking to the library got questioned within minutes. Agnes had seen the data cross her bench in 3 separate cases. She'd read depositions from families stopped for matching descriptions that consisted of nothing more than black male, medium build. She'd reviewed body camera footage of officers demanding ID from black contractors working on homes they were explicitly hired to renovate. She'd issued rulings against departments that operated exactly like Meadowbrook PD. But those were other people's stories, other families' trauma, abstract legal violations she could remedy with injunctions and settlements. Today, it became personal. Today, the mathematics of Meadowbrook would collide with the constitutional authority of a federal judge who refused to accept that her grandchildren's blackness made them suspects. Officer Anthony Smith had been watching them since they walked in. Not consciously at first, just that background radar every cop develops, scanning for things that don't fit the pattern. And they didn't fit. Black woman, 2 black teenagers, sitting in his Meadowbrook KFC on a Saturday afternoon. Then he saw the phones. Brand new, still being set up. The girl was squealing. The boy was focused and careful, both of them handling devices that cost $800 retail. The math assembled itself in Smith's brain with the automaticity of 15 years in law enforcement, 15 years in a department that rewarded proactive policing, 15 years of internal messaging that equated blackness with suspicion. Black teenagers. Expensive electronics. Meadowbrook location. The equation solved itself. Theft. Maybe they boosted them from the Apple store in the mall. Maybe they were part of one of those organized retail rings the department briefings kept mentioning. Maybe the grandmother was fencing stolen property, using kids as cover. The specifics didn't matter. What mattered was the presence of something that didn't belong. Black people with nice things in his jurisdiction. Smith stood, his hand settling naturally onto his duty belt near his Glock, a positioning so practiced it felt like breathing. He walked toward their booth, authority in every step, already certain of what he'd find. He was about to discover just how wrong certainty could be. Smith wasn't hearing her. Agnes could see it in his eyes, that cop certainty that overrides evidence, that transforms explanation into resistance. I need receipts. Now. His voice carried across the restaurant, deliberate, designed to humiliate. Because those phones? Kids from the city don't just have those. Not legitimately. Officer, I purchased these phones 6 days ago at the Apple Store. My grandchildren earned them through academic achievement. We have every right. You're just covering for them. Smith cut her off, his hand still resting near his weapon. I've seen this before. Organized retail crime rings use older women, use kids, think it makes them look innocent. He leaned closer, his voice dropping but losing none of its edge. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to show me proof of purchase right now, or I'm calling Child Protective Services. Have them investigate whether these kids should even be with you. Marcus started shaking, his hands pressed flat on the table, trying to stay visible, trying to stay safe. Keisha's tears came silently, streaming down her face as she stared at her grandmother, terrified. Agnes felt something crack inside her chest. Not fear, fury. The kind of righteous judicial fury that had sent corrupt officials to prison and dismantled unconstitutional systems. Officer Smith had just made the worst mistake of his career. Agnes reached slowly into her purse. Smith's entire body tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward his service weapon, eyes locked on her movements. She watched him calculate threat levels, watched his training override his judgment, watched him prepare to draw on a 62-year-old grandmother reaching for her belongings. She pulled out a leather credential case and placed it on the table between them. Officer Smith. Her voice was quiet, controlled, carrying the weight of 18 years on the federal bench. Before you continue, I need you to understand exactly who you're threatening. I am Judge Agnes Lawrence, United States District Court, Middle District, federal appointee, life tenure. She opened the credential case, revealing the gold-embossed judicial seal, her official identification, the physical proof of constitutional authority. What you are doing right now, detaining us without reasonable suspicion, making accusations based solely on race, threatening to weaponize Child Protective Services as retaliation, constitutes a clear violation of the 4th and 14th Amendments, and I am documenting every single word of this encounter. The restaurant had gone silent. Every phone was recording. Every witness was watching. Smith's face drained of color, his hand dropping away from his weapon as the full magnitude of his mistake registered. He had just violated the civil rights of a federal judge and her grandchildren in front of dozens of witnesses. Smith retreated to his cruiser within minutes, stammering excuses about procedures and misunderstandings. Agnes didn't follow him. She stayed seated, pulled Marcus and Keisha close, and began building the case that would end his career. First, the receipts. She opened her phone, pulled up the Apple Store email confirmation from 6 days earlier. 2 iPhone 14s, $798.99 each, purchased at 3:47 p.m. her visa ending in 4492. The physical receipts were at home, but the digital trail was irrefutable, time-stamped, backed by credit card statements she could subpoena within hours. Then came the teenager behind the register, a 17-year-old with purple hair and a phone that had captured everything. She approached Agnes's table nervously, showed her the video. 9 minutes of footage, crystal clear audio. Kids from the city don't have brand new iPhones. People like you don't give me orders. And the devastating kicker: these kids didn't buy anything that nice. Agnes took the girl's contact information, watched her airdrop the video file, felt the weight of ironclad evidence settling into her phone's memory. Finally, in the parking lot, Agnes sat in her car and typed detailed notes while Marcus and Keisha waited quietly. Every word Smith said, every threat, every constitutional violation, documented with judicial precision, time-stamped, ready for federal court. Agnes filed the federal subpoena on Monday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, she had Officer Anthony Smith's complete personnel file spread across her dining room table, and the pattern was undeniable. 23 complaints in 15 years. 16 excessive force allegations, all against Black or Latino subjects. 7 racial profiling complaints. Stops without reasonable suspicion. ID demands without legal justification. Searches based on nothing but skin color. Every single complaint investigated by Meadowbrook PD's own internal affairs unit. Every single one dismissed. Within policy guidelines. Insufficient evidence. Complainant failed to cooperate. That last phrase appeared 9 times. 9 families discouraged, worn down, convinced by city attorneys that pursuing complaints would be expensive and futile. Then Agnes found the email, dated April 2019, sent from the Meadowbrook city attorney to the police chief and mayor. Subject line: The Anthony Smith Problem. She read it 3 times, her judicial training battling against her grandmother's rage. Smith is a lawsuit waiting to happen. We've paid $140,000 in settlements over 4 years, all minority complainants, all excessive force or racial profiling. We keep settling to avoid discovery, but eventually someone will take us to trial. Recommend reassignment or early retirement. The police chief's response, 2 lines. Smith gets results. We stand by our officers. That email would become Exhibit A in a $3.5 million lawsuit. The first settlement offer arrived 3 weeks after Agnes filed suit. The Meadowbrook city attorney called her legal team directly, voice tight with barely concealed panic. $500,000. Confidential settlement. No admission of wrongdoing. All parties sign NDAs. Agnes's attorney from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund didn't even relay the full offer before Agnes said no. The second offer came a month later, after local news broke the story about the 2019 email. $1 million. Still confidential. Still no accountability. Agnes's response was a 40-page amended complaint adding the police chief and mayor as defendants, citing deliberate indifference to constitutional violations. The third offer never came formally. Instead, the Department of Justice announced a pattern and practice investigation into Meadowbrook Police Department, triggered by Agnes's case and 24 similar complaints the publicity had surfaced. That's when the city attorney called again. This time, different terms. $3.5 million. Public settlement. Mandatory reforms. Body cameras for all officers. Independent civilian oversight board. ban on racial profiling in department policy, Smith's termination and federal prosecution. And one more condition Agnes insisted on personally. She would chair the new Oversight Commission. The City Council voted 7-2 to approve the settlement. They had no choice. Fighting a federal judge backed by the DOJ was financial suicide. 6 months after the settlement, Marcus and Keisha still see Dr. Richardson every Thursday. The nightmares have stopped, mostly. Marcus can look at police officers without his hands shaking. Keisha can use her phone in public without feeling like she needs to hide it. They're healing slowly the way trauma heals, incompletely but progressively. Officer Anthony Smith was convicted in federal court on 2 counts of deprivation of rights under color of law. 18 months in federal prison, no possibility of parole, permanent ban from law enforcement. He appealed. He lost. The Lawrence Oversight Commission meets monthly in Meadowbrook City Hall. Judge Agnes Lawrence chairs it pro bono, wielding subpoena power and budget authority. 4 officers have been disciplined for constitutional violations in 6 months. Officers the old internal affairs process would have protected. Body camera compliance hit 100%. Civilian complaints dropped 60%, not because people stopped reporting, but because officers stopped violating rights. And Agnes established the Lawrence Family Defense Fund with half her settlement money. Legal representation for families targeted by police bias, no cost, no questions asked. Because Marcus and Keisha weren't the first family officer Smith profiled. But Agnes would make damn sure they helped protect the last. Share your thoughts in the comments. This story proves that even city council members with power and platforms cannot protect their families from racism. But it also shows that power used strategically can force systems to change in ways that protect the families who come after. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next story.